Hey team, so if you are a small business owner like myself, hi, I'm Deepak Shukla. I'm a small to medium business owner. We do multiple seven figures. I run a company called the Pearl Lemon Group. And the first thing I want to underline is that I'm here today to talk about how to hire and recruit and retain amazing people and how this actually bleeds into the people as a consequence that you surround yourself with. So let's begin first of all by practically talking about some things from a human resources perspective. If you've arrived at this video because you want to have amazing people as part of your company and you want to recruit and retain them, then there's a couple of points that I'll go through at a tactical level that I think are quite important. So number one, if you're a small to medium business owner and you're optimizing for the long term, meaning that you intend to be in business, and you probably do because you have gone into business with the view that you want this to be probably a lifetime successful thing. Okay. So what that means is that whether you're 18, whether you're 28, whether you're 48, the logic stands that you intend to remain in business for the rest of your foreseeable career. People typically don't tend to go into business with a view to then return to employment. So with that in mind, if you're a business owner and you're watching this, and there's going to be different buckets, or if you intend to run your own business one day, it just is logical to optimize your relationships for the long term. What I mean by that is to engage only in relationships where you would be proud to be in a relationship with such a person in 5 years from now, in 10 years from now. And that should cross both ways, meaning this person that I know professionally, is it someone who I could see being at my dinner table? If it isn't, you probably should rethink the person that you're communicating with because the value that you can gain with the right people that are in the room over the course of a lifetime is far, far, far greater than anything you can retain in the course of a month, possibly even a year. Now, there are people for different seasons in your life. So as you grow as part of your journey as a small to medium business owner, you may find that as you progress to the next level of your business, that the skill requirement or the managerial requirement or the technical requirement outgrows the people that you have. And that's actually great because then either it forces the people you have to grow with you, or you need to leave the people you have with you behind. So how this applies to then your business is recruitment is everything. The people that are around you is everything because outside of yourself, it's all the people that you surround yourself with who are fundamentally going to levy the biggest influence in your life. So if you're a small to medium business owner, have a internal recruitment team. Most small companies don't, which is honestly crazy to me because it's very, very difficult to expect a external person who doesn't live and breathe your company culture to completely understand the requirement of your business, your mindset, your goals. So that's just the first practical thing. Two practical things. If it isn't someone that you could see as being at your dinner table as well as being in the boardroom, then I think that you should reconsider the caliber of that person because it probably means that that person isn't at the level that would make you comfortable to grow alongside them. And that's quite an uncomfortable thing. It's a really, really uncomfortable thing. It's difficult. It's not difficult when there's people that you meet that you fundamentally can push away from because there's things about them that you fundamentally disagree with. But it becomes difficult because a lot of people mean well, but meaning well doesn't mean they do well. They're not the same thing. People mean well, they don't do well. So being more objective with the people that you hire also begins with your HR team in and of itself. So making sure that, of course, when you're hiring, the key to hiring and retaining amazing people in your life begins with having an extremely high bar and filter for how people are allowed to come into your life. So at a practical level, if you go to the gym and you're previously out of shape, then you're more likely to be exposed to a high caliber of people. If you go from the gym to a athletic or competitive type of sport, again, the caliber goes up once more, and so on and so forth. And then practically at work, it means that actually, not only do you need a HR team, your HR team or person or individual acts as the filter. So that's where you have to ensure that your HR team are amongst the highest caliber people within your company. And if you're your HR team, then I'm talking to you. Look across the journeys of some of the biggest CEOs, and they spend a massive amount of their time on recruitment. Steve Jobs didn't have the idea for the iPod or either the iPhone himself. He actually poo-pooed the idea multiple times, but his team continuously brought it to him. Steve Jobs didn't. Everyone talks about his famous speech at Stanford, his Stanford commencement speech, where he spoke about dropping out of the engineering classes so he could start dropping into the calligraphy classes where he learned about fonts and beautiful design. But Steve Jobs didn't produce any of the design. It was a British guy who came and had all of the ideas. What Steve Jobs did do is spend 40% or an inordinate amount of his time on recruitment, because then your best people can often do the thinking for you. So if you're the one that's doing the hiring, improve your own bar and make sure that the bar that you set for the people that you surround yourself with is correspondingly high as well. And part of that's difficult because you have to say no to some people that mean well, but you're not sure if they can do well. And or you're not sure if you're doing your job correctly, potentially the caliber to continue to do well. So you have to make these decisions. Some people call it ruthless, but it isn't. It's a service. Because otherwise, you misguide people into thinking, and a lot of people spend their lives doing this, thinking they are at a greater level than which they already are. This is something that I've spent some of my time doing. I think I've walked around blind because I've not always realized the standards that I allow into my life when I turn a blind eye to some things or accept some things when really I shouldn't. So the key to building and finding amazing people begins with the mindset shift that you need to make. Once you make the mindset shift, you can then actualize that into practical standards, whether personal or professional. Personal standards could be, well, I don't smoke, I exercise, I go to the gym X times a week, I try and play something competitive, I have these types of aspirations, I'm a reader, I go to bed and I wake up at a certain time. Generally, I want to find some semblance of these qualities in the people that I surround myself with. And as you build that list, what should stick out is all the people that aren't part of that list. It should become quite blindingly obvious, actually. And then there needs to be a bit of a process of separation because the path to mediocrity is insidious and it's disguised in all of these small measures of acceptance we make for shit standards in our lives. That's the friend who'll have the additional Oreo milkshake at the burger place. That's the friend who'll say, come on, one more beer. That's the friend who'll say, oh, you know what? I can't be bothered to go to the gym. That'll be the friend who'll say after the gym, let's drive over to McDonald's. That'll be the friend who said, you know what, I didn't keep up with the book club, couldn't be asked. If this holds true for people in your life, then you probably need to change the people in your life. Now let's look at it professionally. How do you then increase the caliber of the people that come in? It begins with looking at the best standard that you have access to. So you look at the best person who's in your team, and if that best person is you, you write down all of those standards, and you need to find the closest approximation to that. And you need to be ruthless. You need to not accept people that dip below that standard, because in dipping below that standard, you not only hurt yourself, you hurt the team, because the team then see what you're prepared to accept. And the team are only as good as the person who operates at the lowest standard. And again, this is the part that's challenging. I still have the same challenge. People mean well, but if they don't do well, does that do well for your business and your life over the course of the long term? So when you think of it in those terms, practically then, as a business owner or as someone who desires to change their social circle, you of course to take on the moving from couch potato to gym goer to class in the gym goer to hobbyist athlete to semi-professional athlete, you have to change the practical bars and you have to change your exposure and your ability to be exposed. So practically, as a recruiter, what does that mean? It means that you need to increase your applicant pool aggressively. Because if you can increase your exposure, your throughput, so the amount, if you have your filter here and your filter is this high, but then you discover that the people as accordance to that filter in your current network are largely here, then you need to find a lot of people up here. And not everyone's going to potentially, if you do it actually correctly, want to come here because really you should be aiming here to achieve here. And in aiming to achieve here, you'll get some of this. And one of the ways that you do is you expand your network, you expand your pool. So personally, you start attending different types of events. You get exposure to different kinds of people. Professionally, you go from one application a day to 100 applications a day to 500 applications a day. And what that means is it allows you to continuously increase the actual standard of people that you'll accept because you increase your applicant pool. And then it becomes a simple case of math. Volume, in some cases, professionally, can solve the quality problem because in building volume, you'll invariably increase the overall quality if your filter fundamentally remains high. And then as you are able to increase your applicant pool, you can then increase or set the bar even higher with the filter. So practically at Pearl Lemon, what has that meant? It has meant that we don't fundamentally care. I've not cared for a huge degree about people's background or experience. I've said it's all about what you can do on the job. So I've not looked at people's academic careers or resumes. My mindset shifted in the last 2 months when I thought, that's true, but if someone has got an MBA and or a degree from a top university and has credible work experience, they're probably more likely to have gone through a level of discipline than someone who hasn't. Statistically speaking, the examples of that would be in the tech world, many of the famous tech entrepreneurs are top university dropouts. So what's important about that, and sometimes people miss it, is they already were able and capable enough to get into the top universities because people will say it doesn't matter. But that's a parallel. So I say this because experience, academic background, and education doesn't matter because it doesn't, but it can help as a crude filter. And there's always exceptions to that filter. But as we've been able to increase our applicant pool, we're increasing the standard of the people that we can accept. So now, one of the people on the call, Yashwasi, has said, I'm filtering more aggressively for people that have MBAs and people that have degrees. And correspondingly, that does give you some sense of reference point. And it just makes sense. And I didn't used to do that before. And not doing it before still allowed me to find great people, but there was a problem of consistency because alongside the great people, there'd also be a lot of bad people. So the people that don't have experience or don't have the academic background will still be good enough to get through the application because they'll impress. And then the conversation would be, Yashaswi would say, this person doesn't have a degree, but I was so impressed with their application that I don't care. It doesn't matter because they got the top marks and they wrote such a good application that it didn't matter. So when you are able to increase your volume, you can begin to act a little bit more like a corporate employer, which is really interesting. You can grade at the same standard as Netflix or Apple or Google because you have increased the volume through which you pass people through. And once that has happened, and again, there's all kinds of things that need to adjust in accordance with the standard that you set for the company in terms of your filter. Because in setting a standard for your own filter, one of the ironies is that you might not even, in some respects, represent or manifest the filter for which you set for yourself. So a practical example is that, well, if Pearl Lemon want to attract top tier candidates, where are the weaknesses in our recruitment process? Where are the weaknesses in our actual process in terms of what we do with onboarding and how we develop people? What is it that we do that's lacking? Where are the problems? And guys, you'll get problems because one of the beauties with recruitment is the best learning comes from every person who rejects you, because every person who rejects you offers valuable information as to what could be better about your application process, because you've simply not been persuasive enough. So often you need to improve the process to match the filter for which you set the standard for yourself. So the equivalent in your personal life is, if you have a set of standards that you want to operate at, are you living those standards in practice? Or are these still aspirations? So if you, for example, determine, and this was one of the things that led to a change in my life, when I, during COVID, went on a journey and started reading 4 to 8 books a month, as you can imagine, I naturally had a desire to want to talk about the things that I'd read. Because as much as you are what you eat, you are what you consume. So I had a desire to talk about the learnings from reading multiple books by Grant Cardone in a row, by reading multiple books about entrepreneurship, about startups, about change management, about organizational strategies, about personal development. My friends weren't interested in having those conversations. And it was only until I'd got a certain path down the way that I was able to then re-engineer my fundamentally network. So practically what that means when it comes to hiring amazing people, there's a whole series of sequential steps. So first of all, you increase the volume of exposure to the market. And that should be a never-ending journey. Go from whatever the bar is, we get 100 applications a day, great. We're not finding enough candidates here. Okay, we're simply not either posting in enough places, or our posts aren't attractive enough to attract the right candidates. It's a combination of one of these. So practically in the recruitment space, that means, are we using and utilizing all of the platforms and resources that we have for us? And this has applications personally and professionally, and I'll explain. So you can post on dedicated recruitment platforms, and you could say, look, on recruitment platforms, we're strong, but are we making most of the unstructured platforms such as social media? Are we posting in Facebook groups? Some of the best applicants or best people at Pearl Lemon have come from Facebook, people that I have found, who I found in Facebook groups, and have not gone through our traditional application process. They've just been, so there's structured platforms, but there's also unstructured platforms. And the same as applications for example, your personal or professional life. Are you joining the right groups? Are you lurking in the right communities? Are you seeking to build new relationships with people that can help you raise your standard in new areas in the right places? And that's how you can then remove people or replace people and up your standard. So we increase the volume of applications, which is a never-ending journey. We improve the quality of the job descriptions to then, so, and you've got to be scientific about it. So you've got to analyze each of the platforms and say, well, okay, I want to hire and retain amazing people. How many applications per role on each platform are we getting? has that increased month on month? So you've got to treat it a little bit scientifically as well, because the math is useful because it'll begin to tell you also where you get outside returns. Where do I get access to the best people? How do I then attract the best people? And then you'll find, much like in your personal life, different people have different expectations for what they consider a normal relationship. So for me, if someone's talking to me about a TV show or politics, I immediately say this isn't the right person for me. These aren't things that I'm interested in talking about. If people are talking to me about business, about mindset, about athletic achievement, I'm interested. I'm interested in people that tether themselves to goals and are aspirational and drive towards it, because that helps me up my standard. I take energy from other people telling me about their achievements or their journey with whatever it is they're trying to achieve. My business partner, Axel, as part of the food and beverage business, he is training at the level of a CrossFit competitor. And it's impressive some of the things that he can do with a clean and jerk over 110 kilos above his head, and he weighs 70 kilos. And I find these things impressive. And he works with me inside of business. And we talk about often how we have barely any friends because most people just talk about stuff that's nonsensical, non-interesting, and doesn't help us progress towards our goals. So we have a very, very, very small social circle. And that's why probably we become business partners. And when I think about people that are at that level, the reality is that there's not that many people. And that's why it's difficult. And but difficult is merely a challenge and not an impossibility. And for you, again, also, and this is part of the reason that I've begun this video journey, for you to attract also to you the right caliber of people, you need to present yourself and be that caliber of person. So a lot of it is also about yourself. So I know in the journey of learning how to run 100 miles, that's going to help attract a certain kind of person to me. So stuff like that is always helpful. So much about yourself, and then also how this has applications, of course, for recruitment and building a better network. And again, I repeat, because it's so important, we will unwittingly allow across the journey our standards to drop based upon other things that we shouldn't ordinarily accept. You get on and have a really good laugh with someone, but they're always late and they're a little bit unreliable. Do people exist that you can get along with really well, that are always on time? Of course they do. Of course they do. All of these issues are low-level forms of abuse that you expose yourself to because you're unwilling to weather the storm of the gap from removing things that lessen yourself into the pain that often people experience of the void and all of the problems that come with it. Practically at Pearl Lemon, what does that mean? It means when there's been times where we haven't had a HR team and there's been huge pressure to bring in people, I have historically allowed at times my standards to slip because people have come in that really shouldn't be part of the company. And if, again, I repeat, if you continuously focus upon progression, you will get to a place where you can over time build lifetime relationships, because there's no shortage of people that will pay lip service to progress. But talking is not doing, and doing is far more than talking. And you'll find as you look through it, a lot of people that talk, but it's important to look at what people do, which goes back to the whole adage of hustle in silence and let success make the noise, which is where you have to see, well, for me, practically, one of the things that I have attuned myself to is listening to the small things or the small commitments that people make, and then seeing if they live it and if they breathe it, and then seeing where they don't and thinking, okay, I've got a sense of the standards that you set for yourself now. You say you want it, but you don't want it like I want it. And that's often a limitation of language. There's no shortage of people that say they want it, right? You find it everywhere. I'm going to get after it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to put the work in. And then you think, yeah, your level of work and the level of work for which I aspire to have is so different. It's just insane. And one of the reasons that I'll go yesterday in 25-degree heat and I'll do a 1 hour run running up hills, mountains that we have here in Italy is because discipline is something that I want to practice daily. And the pain helps remind me of the struggle. And it helps keep my mind disciplined and keeps me thinking that, yes, it's meant to be hard. It's a difficult journey. And don't allow or keep working towards an ever relenting desire to improve your personal standards. And inherently, this makes life a little bit lonely because if you want to be a warrior in a garden, then you're going to set yourself aside. So I think that for the HR team that are here, for some of the other people that are here, what I'm trying to engineer within you is the mindset shift outside of all of the tactics that come alongside it, because the mindset shift and the ever relenting desire to increase the standard at which you live and which you operate for everything should then manifest in, for us, Pearl Lemon, having an increasingly higher standard of people that are coming in. And the process of that is inherently uncomfortable because it should force you to up your own standards. Because you'll also see the inconsistencies of some of the things that you say. A small example of it, of course, is right now. Not everyone has their camera on. And that's a standard that I'm accepting. And it's hard. I say these things and I recognize it's hard because there's, which allowances do we make? Which allowances don't we make? The important thing when it comes to finding and recruiting amazing talent and retaining amazing talent is increase your exposure to the talent to which you want to aspire to work alongside, to be. We had a girl who joined recently, Ashima. And that really opened up my mind as a good example of it. Saurabh said, he said, oh, Deepak, since things have changed of late because the caliber of people that are applying is changing. She's got a job offer at Deloitte. And I used to work for Deloitte. So I've got a good understanding of the requirement to work at a company such as Deloitte. And I thought, oh, how would Pearl Lemon change if we could begin to compete with the best companies in the world in terms of attracting amazingly talented people? That's the right way to be thinking. The question, of course, of how is always a challenging one. But rather than why do you want to do that, it's why not? Why not? Why don't I one day want to build a company where people say, you know what, I was going to go to Oxford because I got my 7 A's at A level, but I'd rather do this because I think I can see a brighter future. You know what, I finished at Yale or whatever it might be. So then the question becomes, and of course, inherently, that makes life uncomfortable because I didn't go to Yale. I didn't go to Stanford. I didn't go to Oxford. But is being around those people going to better me? Probably. Is being around such people going to help the company excel? Being around people that have that level of ability, irrespective of academic achievement, because it's just a token. So it's difficult to do. And I struggle with it also because it exposes your own ultimately holes, weaknesses, and inconsistencies with which we say. But the important thing, this is all that matters. And this is why I brought you here today, HR team. For all of you, the important thing is that you start because it's a lifelong commitment. And if you do it once and the first time that you evolve and change your circle, you can do it again and again and again. And I'm still at a stage where I'm way behind where I really want to be and need to be when it comes to improving the caliber of the people that we have at Pearl Lemon. It's something that's held me back, I think, for a long time. I recall watching, I think even 2 days ago, a video with Alex Hormozy where he talks about selling gym launch for 46.2 million. He's an entrepreneur, an influencer also, but predominantly an entrepreneur. And he talked about lining up in the boardroom with his group of people that helped take Gym Launch to a couple of 100 million in terms of valuation, to the other side of the table, private equity company that were worth 3 billion. And he looked at the caliber of the people to his left and right and looked at the caliber of the people in front of him. And he says, oh, wow, I just realized there's more levels to this game. There's levels and there's levels and there are levels. The levels never stop. It's an infinite game of Donkey Kong. The important point is that you keep working through the levels. You're going to get beaten by the boss multiple times and you might get stuck at, I've been stuck at level 7 when it comes to the way that I thought about recruitment for literally the last 5 years. And only in the last 3 months, if I'm being honest, I've really made a commitment to say I'm going to somehow now power up and go from level 7 to level 15. And it's going to be really, really uncomfortable. And I advocate you do that with the way that you think about the caliber of people that are in your life. Don't wait the 5 years of me doing the wrong thing, me treating people in the wrong way. I mean, I've got blog posts where I say, oh, you should treat your team like cadets and be aggressive. And I've got content that it's ridiculous to me now that I had a way of thinking that supported that really, in my mind, backward notion that came from reading some of the books of the late and great entrepreneurs, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, and hearing about their style and how difficult it is to work with them. The world has changed. I am nowhere near at a level big enough to even offer with any proof an alternative perspective. So whether or not that has its applications or approaches, all I'm trying to communicate is that what's different now than what's different 3, 5 years ago. I've invested so much more time within the company of understanding that, you know what, as much as I talk about tactics, about strategy, about the technical way that we onboard people and the tests and this and that, the main thing I need to focus upon is improving the caliber of the people that I have, because then the people that I have will take care of me and take care of the company because they will have the IQ, the thinking, and the ability to help drive the growth of the company. And that's inherently an uncomfortable thing because these aren't a set of circumstances for most of us unless we're born amongst and around entrepreneurs, much in the same way that if you desire to be a power lifter, you don't then go and spend your time with people who don't go to the gym. You don't go and even spend your time potentially with people that are bodybuilders because bodybuilding and powerlifting aren't the same thing. You go and you seek out powerlifters, and that will tend to levy a better result. So if you're watching this and you are a person who works within a company, look at the team that are around you. Expect more from the team that are around you. Force them to raise up their own standard. Be sure when you ask them or force them or coerce them or convince them that you've got a standard that makes ultimately what you're saying something of complete integrity. But do everyone the service of saying, this is where you need to be. I had a friend, Adrian. He was someone that I met during my days of applying to the British military. We did the induction weekend together. He was applying for the engineering stream. I was applying to 21 SAS, the reservists for the British Special Forces. So we met because we were bunk buddies in the same dorm that we were in. Amazing guy. And one of the challenges that we had with our journey was that he would often in the early years speak a lot about what was happening in his life and his problems and his challenges and his situation with difficult parents and bad relationships and people around him that were doing drugs, etc. And I'll always remember because outside of that we got along so well and we'd laughed and we talked. I remember saying to him, Adrian, I'm not going to be your friend anymore if you keep talking about this stuff. I can't communicate with you. And we didn't speak for about 6 weeks. And then we started messaging again. And then the behavior appeared again. And then I said, you're doing the same fucking thing. I can't, this isn't a you relationship. It was really uncomfortable telling him these things. We drifted again. Then another issue came up when he, we drifted, we got back. Consistently and consecutively, things improved. He got better. The message was uncomfortable, but it didn't mean the message was incorrect. It was uncomfortable for me to say it. It was uncomfortable for him to hear it. But to his credit, he heard me because he did improve. Came back, and then there was a different problem. I invited him to a house party in Fulham where I used to live, and there were colleagues that were there from work. And he had a little bit to drink and he behaved somewhat inappropriately. And again, I said, this is not acceptable. Our relationship, this is not acceptable. We didn't speak for about 3 months. He gave up alcohol. He's not had a drop of alcohol since. So I'm not saying, and I tell you to say that I'm not saying that you should simply eradicate the relationships in your life, but if there are relationships you wish to maintain, allow people the opportunity to progress, but be direct in your expectations. And if people aren't willing to push past or push forward with that, then they're probably the wrong people for you in your life. But by not telling them that, you do them and you do yourself a disservice because you allow people to think that they are more comfortable than they really are. And that's something that the sooner you get better at communicating in the long term, because all of this is deferred benefit. The process is uncomfortable. Your friends think you're, or family think you're a bit weird, or you actively start avoiding people, or you recruit people, or you look at recruiting people, and because you have a great chat with them, you maybe let your standards slip in other spaces. So you have to build that discipline, that muscle of being objective, the objectivity muscle. You know what? But they're a nice guy. Yeah, but they don't know how to do VBA lookups in Excel, and we need that. And that's a fundamental part to this role. Oh, he's a nice guy. Yeah, but he smokes 10, 50 cigarettes a day. Find the guy who is a nice guy who doesn't smoke at all. This is where Hormozy talks about don't spend all of it, and this is the part that I'm still working upon. Don't spend all of your time trying to help get a 4 to a 7. Start with the 7 and try and help them get to a 10. And because they're starting at a 7, they're probably going to get to a 10 really, really quickly. So that's where raising the bar becomes really important. So I hope that as you go on your journey of recruitment, that you understand that what you're optimizing for is the highest possible standard of people around you, which will force you to raise your own standards for yourself, and which will mean that everything correspondingly, if you're willing to go through the pain, the short to medium term pain, because it's not easy. It's not easy, of the goodbyes, of the I'm sorries, of the suddenly my WhatsApp inbox is so quiet, of going through that pain for awaits you on the other side. Better standards, better people, more success, more enrichment, better conversations, better relationships, better life.